Hey everybody, and welcome back to Moto with Ellery, and in this episode we're going to be looking at rendering cloth. So if you want to have a look at setting up a cloth simulation that will give you pretty much exactly what we're looking at right here, make sure you go and check out the previous episode. Also, before we dive in, if you like this training and training like it, make sure to visit my Patreon account, patreon.com/Ellery, to support and get extra files, downloadables, things like that. Or if you'd like just any individual episode, you can check me out on Gumroad, gumroad.com/Ellery. So let's start here just by looking at the basic scene that we've got here. So what I've done is, if you have followed through the previous lesson where we looked at doing a cloth sim, essentially all I've done here is taken that same scene, I've extended my my ground plane and I arced it upwards, and I hid the sphere, and then I took all of the individual items here, and this is something important to remember, is I took all of the individual items, and once all my simulation was done, I just went up to Dynamics and clicked on Remove Dynamics, and then I also deleted the solver. So now dynamics aren't even a part of this scene, so we don't want anything cluttering up the scene that we don't need. And since this is all frozen now, it's all baked into what we see in front of us, we can scrub the timeline and it's not going to change anything. We want to have everything as simplified as possible. So now I have this set up and ready to actually render. So let's just start here. I'm going to take my background first of all, and just to kind of clean up the render and give us something easier to work with, I'm going to take and turn off my specular and my Fresnel, so there's not going to be any reflection. You may want to add that back in later. That's totally fine. But for now, I just want to just remove that so we get a simplified scene. And that's going to give us something easier to work with on a render level. We won't have to wait for as much cleanup in our preview, and we'll be able to see our results a little quicker without the noise in the background. So now let's click over and let's actually start on the cloth itself. So I had recently seen a pretty good tutorial on doing cloth rendering with V-Ray in Maya, and it made me think, how different, how similar this is going to be in Moto. And so if you have seen that one, you could Google search, I'm sure, V-Ray Maya cloth, and tutorial, and you come up with that video. But let's look at how we can do this in Moto. And I think actually Moto via the shader tree, or you could also do this with nodal shading, is going to offer us a little bit more flexibility and some interesting ways that we can approach getting the same general idea, but just getting something here rendered in Moto. I like the way that Moto's workflow works for this. So what we're going to do here is the general idea that we're looking at behind the cloth is that we want to see some gradation, some gradient over the incidence angle. So whether it's facing us or facing perpendicular to our viewpoint, we want to see that alter the color of the cloth. And depending on the type of cloth you're working with, the depth of that color change or that brightness change, and also whether or not it's inverted is going to change, depending on the kind of cloth that we're looking at. So for really tight weaves, things like silk and things like that, you're actually going to look a little bit more opposite to what we're going to do in this one. But we're going to look at just setting up kind of a basic cottony fabric, and how we can set up not only a system that's going to give us something that looks nice and works well as a cloth fabric, but give us something that's very adaptable, that we can change colors on, that we can change all sorts of things on without having to change the foundational structure of it. And then something that we can also take, and from there we can adapt to be other types of cloth without again having to rewrite the entire material. So let's start just by putting some stuff in here. So I'm going to hop over to my preset browser, and I'm already navigated into my images, and we can look here and see I'm under images, and I'm under my cloth. So if we go back, you can see I'm in images, I'm under fabric, and then I'm going into cloth here, and it's got all of our cloth stuff. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to start by putting a few images in here, and we'll start to get the idea of cloth, because we're going to put cloth-based images on here. But then from there, we're going to be able to take that and move into something that is much more adaptable and give us a lot more realistic look, and a look that we can fine-tune to suit our particular needs. So one thing we're going to need a bump map. So let's go ahead and take the bump and drop it in here. And you can see that's going to drop in, of course, to diffuse color, which isn't what we want. Also, as a side note here, as we get going, I'm going to take the material, and I'm also going to kill the specular and the Fresnel on this material. And while we're at it, I'm also going to change from physically based to energy conserving. And initially, you're not going to see any change in the material here, just something to note. But this does give us control over diffuse roughness. So I want to be able to have that control just to be able to, again, fine tune and sweeten the look of the cloth into my specific needs. All right, so let's take this, and it's a little big on the pattern here. So we're going to take our horizontal and vertical wrap, and I'm going to start just by putting up to maybe 10 by 10 so that we get a more dense look here. And I think that's actually, maybe that's a little high. Let's go to 8 by 8. I don't want this to look too fine. Yeah, I think that's going to work. So now what we're going to do is change that down to a bump. So let's go ahead and put that to bump. And we're going to get just back, again, the default color of our cloth now. And we're going to have, the look, though, of, this being a kind of a piece of cloth now that actually has some depth of bump and things. Now, you could go and adjust your bump. That's something that's pretty simple. You guys, if you've watched many of my videos, you already know that in the material here, you can adjust your bump amplitude and that kind of thing. We're not really going to look at that right now. We might fine tune some of those things later on, but for now, we're just going to leave them. Okay, so there we've got our bump on there, and we know that we used, let's go again here, we used an 8 by 8 wrap, which is going to be important because now we're going to go ahead and put on the color, and we want that to line up. So we're going to hop straight to the texture locator, and we're going to set the horizontal and vertical wraps to 8 by 8. Now, you can do this also just, procedurally. You can do it with procedurals. You can do it with other things like that. You could use a weave, probably a weave with a little bit of texture offset to make it not so perfect. But if you have actual images of cloth, which in the built-in Modo content you have, I would recommend using them. Anytime you can take something that is inherently real because it's a photograph, and you can base from there, I find that you're going to end up with more photographic results. You're going to end up with more realistic results because you're actually dealing with something that's real to start with, and then you have the freedom to customize and move on from there. All right, so here, I'm going to get a little bit lower angle here. Maybe let's come in down here like this. Maybe something like that. I kind of want to see all the folds. I want to see some of the kind of edges and that kind of stuff. But overall, okay, you kind of get the idea now that this is a little bit more clothy, but it doesn't really sing as cloth, right? So the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to add on a gradient layer. So let's go over here to our add layer. Go to processing and choose gradient, and by default that's going to come in as diffuse color, which is fine, and it's going to come in, if we go to our texture layers, as incidence angle, which again is fine, that's what we want, but now we need to actually add in some stuff here. And what we want to see is, we want to see here at 100%, let's go ahead and just middle mouse click and add in a point here. I'm going to set this up to 100%, and my value is going to be 1. So essentially we want white at 100%, because as this fades away, we want to see that it is it's actually not affecting the color of the cloth. And so before I go ahead and add anything different here, let's go ahead and change the blend mode to multiply. So to do that, you're going to see immediately now we just have essentially multiplying our color texture by 1. So really nothing's happening. So what we're going to do, though, is we're going to start to drive down our facing angle. So that's going to be the stuff that's facing directly at us here. We're going to drive this down, and because this is set to multiply, it's actually going to darken the cloth here where it's facing us. So let's start by pulling this down relatively far, maybe to 0.5. That's probably a little bit much, but you start to get the idea. And the other thing here is that the curve of the slope here is not working. What I want to do is I want to actually pull this down like this, so that we kind of arc up and into, kind of logarithmically or something like that, into the main color. So as we pull this down here, we'll actually see that we start to get some of that kind of highlight. Now, this is going to darken up your cloth in general, but we're going to look at how to adjust this here in a moment. Now, the next thing we're going to do is, this scene is pretty generic, boring, and really not working for me because it's just the default scene. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hop up to my environments, and I'm going to go into the Smart IBL environments here, and let's go ahead and close this gradient for the moment. I'm looking for something indoors. Let's use Alex's apartment here. Let's just double click and put that in. And one thing that's going to happen here that's going to kind of mess stuff up is it's going to have in a shadow catcher at the ground plane. We really don't want that because it's just going to overlap our ground in some areas, and we don't want to see that. So make sure you go ahead, and if you're using one of the Smart IBL environments, go ahead and just hide the shadow catcher if you're working with a scene like this. If you're actually going to put it into an environment, great, leave it on. But for the most part, we can just leave that off. And then I'm also going to turn off our directional light, because because we want all of our lighting to come from the IBL at this point. So if we, let's go to our 3D view here. So if we look back here, now we've got this here. We shouldn't see a light, so that's good. We've got everything, and now we're pretty much ready to go. Now there's a bunch of noise. Our render quality is not the best. That's not what we're worrying about at the moment, so I'm not going to touch that. Okay, but here we go. We've got kind of a start here, and what I'm going to do is let's go ahead and let's go back to Edit Gradient, and I'm going to pull this down even a little bit more. Let's go maybe down to 0.25, so we actually see some of that shift in color. Now, now this scene is coming out a little bit dark, so you have a couple of options. You can just use additional lighting to kind of help fill things out and add some more ambience to it. You could also go here down to the environments. I could take the environment lighting, and maybe I want to boost this. Maybe we'll go to 3.5 on the environment lighting just to kind of increase that a bit. You know, it's kind of working. But really, the big thing to control here is going to lie inside of the cloth itself, because since we're using a multiply texture layer with this gradient, it's going to inherently darken what we have. So we're not going to have as much as much brightness. Now, alternately, there's another way you can do this, and I'll just show this here before we move on. That's going to be to set your gradient instead of multiply. You can set it to add, and then it's going to do the opposite. It's going to brighten your cloth. So in this case here, let me undo that, and we'll duplicate this before we do anything crazy with it. Let's duplicate it. I'm going to hide this one, and then on this one, we're going to go ahead and I'm going to take this one here, and actually let's start here. I'm going to set this value down to 0, and make sure we're looking at red, green, and blue here. There we go. And this one, see, now this did not add in all of my points here. So here, let's go ahead and make sure I've got everything in here. And I'm going to set all of these to 1 here to start. Let's pull those around. Okay, so there we can see we've got this going on. Just a side note here, if you happen to see, like I did here in the gradient, if you see a color here when you're working with this, you know that it's a red flag that I missed the first time through. But do make sure that you do have keys on red, green, and blue. And then once you have those, just make sure you edit them all together. So there's those. I think that, here, let me go ahead and just straighten them out. And then I'm going to flatten them down so they're all even. Okay, so something like that. But if you want to use this in an additive fashion, here, let's go ahead and change this to add. This is going to be, if you know you want cloth that's going to be, brighter and more vibrant in color, I would say go with this additive method. But then you're going to want to start by taking this way, 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 way down, because all of your color shift is going to come in brightening. It's not going to be darkening the original. Is going to be lightening it. So here, let's go ahead and drive this really far down here, maybe like 0.2 or something like that. Because now we're taking our default value here at the facing angle, which was our starting color, and we're making it brighter as we go. So here, let's go ahead and adjust this a little bit. And there you can kind of see what we've got here going on. So now if you hide this, you can see there's our basic kind of cloth. And actually here, I'm going to go back to my lighting and change this back down to 2.5. So it's not quite so vibrant in here. There we go. So there's our basic cloth just with the texture applied. And then here it is with the little bit brightening version, so the additive version. Here, let's go back down to this gradient here, which actually, incidentally, is missing all of my stuff. So let's go ahead and add that all back in. And let's set these both to 100%. And make sure I've got everything in the right place here. Everything looks like it's a little bit off. So go ahead and set those in. Okay, and then we're going to flatten these out. And then I'm just going to take this point and pull it down. Okay, there we go. So now we're back kind of to where I wanted to start off. So you can see now we're getting, this is a little bit more pronounced now, because instead of just working on, originally we just had something in the blue channel. Now I have something in all the channels. So we can see we've got that fall off here. I personally like going the multiplication way versus the additive way. You tend to get something that's a little less realistic, a little bit more stylized. Though if you want something that has like some real vibrance of colors, obviously feel free to go that route, and it's going to work and give you something fairly interesting. But just keep in mind that that is not the only way to go. I'm going to go with this multiplication route, and now I can take and I can adjust this as much as I want, just to kind of control the overall contrast of what we're doing with the cloth. So going up to higher values on our first point here at 0% is going to give us less contrasty fall off in the cloth, and then going down is going to give us more contrasty fall off. I personally like to go a little bit lower on this. You get a little bit more of kind of a velvety feel. I kind of like that for this. I think that's going to work pretty well. And then I'm also going to, let's make sure we've got points for everybody again here. Yeah, it looks like we do. So let's take this all the way down to 0.2, and then I'm just going to pull this out just to give it a little bit of a steeper curve. And again, it's going to give us a little bit more of that contrast to the edges, which I think I like on this particular cloth. Okay, so now you've set this up, you've got it ready to go. Here, let's go ahead and just for clarity's sake, I'm going to delete this extra diffuse color gradient. But now you want to be able to actually go in and fine tune this and make it, make it look how you want it. Because after all, this is just one burgundy cloth. We want to be able to do different colors. We want different color values and things like that. Now to do that, you can pretty simply just go in here, and all we're going to do is add a layer, processing it. We're going to add a process layer, and a process layer is kind of one of the great unsung heroes, I think, of the shader tree, because it allows you to do, well, a lot of processing. And really what it does is it gives you kind of an HSV adjustment over anything that you've already got here. So we've got diffuse color here. Now I can go in and I can adjust hue, saturation, and value. And actually, I'll show you a little trick here we can do with some nodal shading to be able to make different colors of cloth very quickly. But here, let's start just by looking at, if we want to make the cloth a little bit brighter, I can drive up the value. Maybe we'll go for, give it 15% or something like that, so it's a little bit brighter. Yeah, I think that's good. Saturation, I think it's pretty well saturated already, but you can always drive it down, or you can drive it up if you want something that's really, really bright and saturated. I'm just going to stick with leaving the saturation as is. And then here, if we go to the hue, we can go in and start putting in different things. So, if I put in a hue of 30 degrees, we're going to go to more of that color. If we go to 90 degrees, we're going to go more to the greens, 120, even more green. And you'll notice here, I'm going in increments of about 30 degrees. 30 to 60 degrees. And I think that's going to be an important thing here, is if you want to be able to quickly kind of adjust the color of your fabric, a lot of times you're not going to want to, super fine tune everything. You might just want to go, between some relatively hard stops of color. So in order to do that, let's actually set up a really quick schematic shader that will allow us to do that. And then we'll move on to finish some other things on this cloth. So this is our little diverge into doing this with some nodal shading. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to take my process here. I'm just going to drag it on in, and you see we've got our value, color, and alpha. Great. And I want to make sure that I have my hue here, so let's just drag that in, because that's really what we're looking for. Now, as a side note here, what you can also do is if I just go ahead and right click on this and I just do remove nodes, if I just remove that, I could also just grab the hue if I want and drag it down there, and it's just going to give me my process with the hue. So you have different options for how you do this. And I'm going to set this down to 0. Okay, so we're back at our basic default. And then what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go ahead, let's hop over real quick into setup. I'm going to add in a locator. Okay, and on this locator, I'm going to go over to channels, and I want to add a custom user channel. So let's go ahead and add user channel. And what I want to do is I want to make this such that I have a slider that will pop up. And if I drag the slider in increments, just like click, 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 1, 2, 3, 4, I want that to give me just kind of block control over moving, perhaps 30 degrees on my actual color wheel. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to call this color shift. And channel name can be the same, that's fine. Mode, I want to leave it scalar. Type, I want to change to integer, because this is now just going to give us kind of discrete 1, 2, 3, 4 steps. I want a default value of 0, which means no shift is going to happen. I want to do a minimum and a maximum value. And all I want is I want to be able to go all the way around the color wheel. You know, so really I only need 360 degrees. So if I'm starting at increments of 30 degrees, I only need a maximum value of 12. So I don't need a whole lot on here. And then I'm going to go ahead and click OK. All right. So now I can take this color shift and drag it out here. And if I hold this, if I click on this and go up here and hit C and select the color shift, now you see I actually get this color shift. Okay, great. And we can set this up also so it'll pop up automatically if you want. I'll show you that here in a moment. But so now we've got this, and we want to hook this into the hue, but at 30-degree increments. So I'm going to add, I'm going to go in modifier, math, and I want to do a multiply. Okay, and I want to put the color shift into value 1, and on value 2, I want to put in a value of 30. So anything that goes in here is going to get multiplied by 30. We'll hook that into hue, and now we're set. So if I hop back over to the render view now, and let's go to the 3D view so we can actually see our color shift here. Now we can just go ahead and click this up, and each click on here is going to represent 30 degrees on the color wheel. Now, if I wanted, I could also add a secondary bit here. So here, let's make this, just for kicks. Let's go back over to our schematic view here. And on this locator, I'm also going to add in another user channel. This one I want to make, we're going to leave it at scalar. And this one I'm going to leave at float. Default value is 0. And I want to make a minimum of, let's go -100 and a maximum of 100. This is going to control our saturation. Okay, and then we'll click OK. Hey, oops, we got to name it the right thing. Here, let's call this saturation. Okay, float scalar -100 to 100. Good. Now I'll take this and we'll, oops, it's already out there, so we don't even have to do that. And now what we're going to do is we're going to go to this process here, and I'm going to take the saturation and drag that in there. And if I wanted to, hey, while we're here, we may as well do it. Let's add another one here, and this is going to be our value. So let's add another user channel. We'll call this value. And again, we can go from -100 to 100. That's great. And then we're going to go back to our process, and we're going to drag our value in here. And really, these ones can just go kind of straight across. So saturation can go plug into saturation. Value can plug into value. And really, that's it. So now, if I select all of these, and we go back to our 3D view, and we move this up so we can see all of them, now we have our color shift is based off of this incremental clicking system. Our value, we can take and we can increase our value here so we can get nice subtle changes or big changes if we want. And then here our saturation, same kind of thing. So we can take and drag this up. Now we don't have a lot of real estate here at the moment, so we can't get real fine-tuned granularity, but you can always go in here and click, value of 4, and it's going to just go ahead and put that in. All right, there we go. So now we can change this. Let's go ahead and put this down to 0. I'm going to put this also. Let's just drag it down to 0. So now we're dealing with just, again, our basic cloth, but we have this system here. And just as one last thing, we do want this to actually pop up here. So let's go to our Setup tab, and I'm going to go over here in Properties, and I'm going to go down to Assembly. And here under Utility, what I want to see is when I select this, I want to have the channel hall pop up. And I'm going to go to Locator, and then I'm going to go to Shape here, and let's make a custom shape, which let's just make you a circle. Or not a cylinder, an actual circle. There we go. Let's align it to view. Let's make it not quite so big. And then let's just move it up on the Y so it's kind of sitting up above our cloth. So now we've got something that will allow us to make these changes really quickly. We've set up a really simple rig in here. So let's go over to Render, and now if we go in here and we click on this, ta-da! There we go. We get our pop-up of our channels. We can go and shift our colors. Let's go around there. We can adjust our saturation. Let's make it a little less saturated, and give it a little bit of brightness. And there we go. And actually here, I think there's something that's a little bit off on here. You notice that as I change this value, it's changing very, very quickly. And it's also changing the saturation very quickly. So a little bit of kind of troubleshooting on the schematic view here. And we can see that what's going on here, if we go to our value in our hue, what it's looking for is a %. and these percents are not really what we want. So here, let's go down to, let's go down to the channels here, and let's select our locator, and let's go ahead, and I'm going to add another user channel here, and what I'm going to use here instead of float is I want to use percentage, and I'm going to call this value, I'm going to change this, I'm going to call this value adjust, and let's go ahead and click OK. All right, and then I'm going to add another one here, which I'll call saturation adjust, and I want to make sure that this is also percentage, because that's really what this is looking for. So here, let's go ahead and disconnect these now. Let's plug value adjust into value, saturation adjust into saturation, and then I'm going to go through here, and I'm actually going to just delete these guys. So delete channel, and now, or this should work a little bit better. So now, if we go to this guy here, now our saturation adjust should work a little bit better, as well as our value adjust. Although our rendering is not catching up. There we go. So there's our color shift. There's our saturation, which now, yep, is working on a percentage based. It was doing it multiplying times full increments, so 1 was equal to 100%. So just something to note there. I had clicked on the wrong thing as I started that off, so if you're following along, go back and make you the fix. And there we go. Okay, so I think we've got this all good. Now here, let's do a couple of final tweaks here on our cloth to get something that's nice and render ready. Actually, here, let's go back. I'm gonna leave my cloth at the burgundy color. It's kind of Christmassy colored, and we're getting close to Christmas, so I'm gonna leave that. And now we're gonna go in here, and on my material, I'm gonna go down to material trans, subsurface amount, and I'm gonna set this to maybe 50%. And at first it's going to get super bright. That's okay. Then the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take all of these values here, actually minus the gradient. I don't really care about the gradient having an effect on my actual subsurface. So I'm going to select the process and the image. Let's go to duplicate, and I'm going to set these both to our subsurface color. And now we'll get those kind of matching up. So now if you had something like this sphere in here, if I were to take that and scale it down a little bit, because right now it's overlapping everything, and that's not cool. Let's say I put a light material on the sphere. Let's go to material trans. Let's give it a luminous value of 10. You can start to see the light actually kind of coming through here. If you don't see that, make sure you go to global illumination. Make sure that we have subsurface scattering. I'm going to set it to both, actually, so that indirect illumination is affecting our subsurface scattering. And there you go. We can see the light now kind of coming through. So this is giving us a more rich and in-depth kind of cloth material that's going to react to light and things like that. And here, let's go ahead and make my scattering distance. I'm going to make this 10 millimeters, and my maximum distance maybe 100 millimeters. And let's maybe back off to 25%, so it's not quite so heavy. And there we go. So now we've got our light underneath there. Everything's looking pretty good, and we're set and ready to go. And actually, I'm going to turn that light back off because I'm just going to have a regular scene set up here. And there you go. So this should give you a lot of options for creating a cloth material that you can adapt to different situations. Remember, as I mentioned earlier on, by inverting the gradient so that it's lighter at the facing angle and darker as it trails away, you can get the effect of some tighter weaves. You might also want to experiment with adding on a little bit of reflectivity and Fresnel onto some of those tighter weave ones, as you'll start to see more of the light blend across the surface, and you actually get some reflections start to appear. So that does it for this one. If you liked it, make sure to check out my Patreon and Gumroad accounts. It's patreon.com or gumroad.com/Ellery on both of those. Let me know in the comments below if you'd like to see anything else along this line, or other directions you'd like to see these episodes go with. Other than that, make sure you like, subscribe, and share. Thanks, and I'll see you in the next one.